It was a bright Saturday morning in downtown Silverwood. The soft hum of city life, mixed with the gentle scent of roasted coffee beans drifting out from a small cozy cafe called the Daily Brew. Inside, sunlight poured through the glass windows, painting golden stripes across the wooden tables and cream-colored walls. A man named Evan Miles, a 36-year-old single dad with tired eyes and a calm strength in his face, sat in a corner seat near the window, gently stirring sugar into his coffee, while his 8-year-old daughter, Hannah, colored on a napkin. He wore an old denim jacket that had seen better days. His calloused hands evidence of long hours spent at his construction job. His world was small but honest. Wake up early, work hard, take care of his little girl, and hope tomorrow might be a bit kinder than today. But that morning, life had something unexpected in store for him. At another table sat Isla Sterling, a woman in her early 30s with deep green eyes, a sleek cream coat, and the kind of quiet poise that made people glance twice without understanding why no one in that cafe knew who she was. To them, she was just another beautiful woman sipping coffee, scrolling her phone. But beneath her calm exterior was a name known in business circles worldwide. Isla Sterling, the billionaire CEO of Sterling Group, one of the largest real estate companies in the country. Yet here, she was simply a woman trying to disappear into a moment of normally away from the flash of cameras and the weight of constant expectations. She didn't know that this ordinary morning would change everything. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us good people still exist in this world, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Hopeful and Soul Stories. Your support helps us spread more stories that touch hearts every single day. Even helped Hannah pack up her crayons. Two young men entered the cafe. They were loud, entitled, and already half laughing before they reached the counter. Isla, who had stood up to grab a refill, found herself directly in their path. One of them, tall with messy hair and an expensive jacket, bumped her shoulder so hard her coffee cup slipped and shattered onto the floor. "Watch where you're going," he sneered, though it had clearly been his fault. Izan was to walk away. She'd been judged before for being too cold or unapproachable. But the humiliation burned. Coffee dripped down her sleeve, and the laughter that followed from the men cut deep. The barista looked unsure. The room fell quiet, and no one moved. No one except Evan. He rose from his seat, gently pushed Hannah's chair back, and walked over. "Hey," he said in a voice that was firm but calm, the kind of tone that could cut through arrogance. "Apologize to her." The taller man scoffed. "And who are you?" Her bodyguard even didn't flinch. "No, just someone who knows how to respect people." His voice carried enough quiet steel to draw attention from every table. The man laughed again, but when Evan stepped a little closer, his height, his calm posture, and the protective fire in his eyes, something in his confidence cracked. Muttering under his breath, the man turned and walked out, his friend following behind. Silence lingered before a small round of applause rippled through the cafe. Isla blinked, stunned not by the confrontation, but by the simple sincerity in this stranger's defense. He didn't know who she was. He didn't care about her wealth, her influence, or her image. He had simply acted out of decency, and that was something she rarely saw anymore. "Thank you," she said softly, brushing the coffee from her coat. Evan offered her a napkin. "No one should be treated like that." "You okay?" She nodded. "I am now." They spoke for a few minutes. Just simple things. The weather, her ruined coat, his daughter's drawing that somehow ended up in Isla's hands. When Hannah smiled shyly at her, Isla's heart warmed in a way she hadn't expected. There was something about the father and daughter, their bond, their quiet strength that made her want to know more. After they left, Ella couldn't stop thinking about them. That evening, back in her penthouse, overlooking the skyline, she found herself replaying the moment in her mind. The world around her was marble and glass, cold, luxurious, and empty. But when she thought of that humble man and his little girl, something stirred inside her, a longing for the simplicity and warmth she hadn't felt in years. She asked her assistant to find out who he was, not to invade, but because she couldn't shake the feeling that fate had brushed their paths together for a reason. Days passed. Evan returned to his usual routine. Unaware of the attention he'd drawn, he woke before dawn, packed Hannah's lunch, and walked her to school before heading to work at a construction site near the edge of town. The pay was barely enough to cover rent and groceries, but he never complained. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier in a car accident, leaving him to raise Hannah alone. Every night, he tucked her in with stories about Angel's hope and the promise that tomorrow will always give us another chance. But behind those words, he often fought his own battles, late bills, exhaustion, and the quiet ache of loneliness that no one saw. One Friday afternoon, a black luxury car pulled up outside the site. Everyone turned to stare as Isla Sterling stepped out in a crisp navy dress and sunglasses. On was hauling cement bags when his supervisor shouted his name, telling him someone wanted to speak with him. Confused, he wiped his hands on his jeans and approached her. "Mem Sterling," he said, unsure how to address her. She smiled. "Evan, right? We met at the coffee shop." He nodded, still not connecting the dots. "Yeah, I remember. Didn't expect to see you here." "I came to thank you properly," she said. "And to offer something." She explained that her company had recently launched a community rebuilding project, offering stable, well-paid positions to skilled workers for affordable housing construction. She wanted Evan to join as a site supervisor with better pay, benefits, and flexible hours, so he could be there for his daughter. Evan blinked, stunned. That's more than I could have hoped for." "But why me?" Her voice softened. "Because you stood up for someone when you didn't have to. The world needs more people like that on their feet, not struggling to survive." He accepted the job, hesitant at first, but deeply grateful. In the weeks that followed, life began to change. His new position brought security, dignity, and hope. He could finally afford Hannah's art classes. Their small apartment, once cold and dim, slowly filled with laughter again. And Isla, she kept visiting the sites, always finding an excuse to check in. Sometimes she brought coffee, sometimes fresh muffins for the workers, but more often she stayed just long enough to talk to Evan. They shared stories about loss, resilience, and the quiet beauty of ordinary days. She told him about her mother who had raised her alone after her father's death, teaching her that wealth meant nothing if you forgot kindness. He told her how every scar on his hands reminded him of what he worked for, a future for his daughter. The connection between them grew slowly, but deeply. It wasn't born from romance at first. It was born from respect, empathy, and the rare comfort of being understood. Months passed, and one spring morning, Ella invited Evan and Hannah to an open field where Sterling Group was launching a new project, an initiative to build free homes for struggling single parents. Standing before the crowd, she gave a heartfelt speech about the importance of compassion and community. Then she paused, looked at Evan and Hannah in the front row, and said, "This idea began with a man who reminded me that kindness doesn't come from wealth or power. It comes from courage, from standing up for someone, even when no one's watching." Ian's eyes glistened as applause filled the air. Hannah hugged him tightly, whispering, "That's you, Daddy." After the ceremony, Ella approached him quietly. "You changed more than my morning that day," she said softly. "You reminded me who I want to be." He smiled, his eyes warm. "And you gave me a chance to start again." They stood there, sunlight glowing between them, the crowd fading into a blur. In that moment, two lives that once existed in separate worlds found a shared rhythm built not on money or fame, but on kindness and gratitude. From that day on, Ella and Evan's friendship deepened into something stronger. She visited often, not as a CEO, but as someone who cared. She became part of Hannah's little world, attending her school art shows, sharing dinners, and laughing over burnt pancakes in Evan's modest kitchen. Slowly, love bloomed. Not rushed, not forced, but genuine. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was real, built on scars, second chances, and the beauty of ordinary hearts finding each other. And on one quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, EA looked at Evan across the dinner table and said, "You didn't know who I was when you defended me. You just saw someone who needed help. That's what made me fall for you." Evan reached across, taking her hand gently. "I didn't need to know your name, to know you were worth standing up for. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fanfare or grand gestures. It walks in quietly through the door of kindness. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journaled. Let's remind the world that kindness still matters and second chances can change lives. Comment below. Kindness is powerful if you believe one small act of courage can change someone's entire world, because sometimes it really does.